It was a Wednesday afternoon. I was sitting in my car, parked in front of my childhood home, the one with the fading blue shutters and the roses she loved so much. I hadn't been inside in years. I just sat there with my hands on the wheel, engine off, heart racing, feeling like I was 8 years old again, waiting for her to come outside and tell me to stop slouching, to tuck in my shirt, to stop crying. And in that moment, I realized something I had spent decades avoiding. I was still trying to earn her love, still trying to be the version of myself she could finally approve of, still carrying her unmet expectations as if they were sacred scripture. And that's when it hit me. You don't just inherit your mother's smile or her eyes. You also inherit her pain, her silence, her fear. But here's the truth. You can't heal from what she passed down until you see it clearly. So today, I want to talk to you about something tender and life-changing, something you cannot bypass on the road to healing. You will never truly heal until you understand this about your mother. If this message speaks to something tender in you, take a moment, like, comment, share, or subscribe. Not for the numbers, but because stories heal us best when we heal together. We often carry this one-dimensional image of our mothers, like they were born the day we arrived, as if they existed solely to be mom. It's such a strange, quiet illusion we all carry without realizing it. We look at them and forget they were once girls too. Girls with scraped knees and big dreams. Girls who laughed too loud or cried themselves to sleep. Girls who wanted to be seen, to be heard, to be held, and maybe never were. But here's the aching truth. Your mother had a whole life before you, a history, a backstory, 1,000 silent moments that shaped who she became long before you ever looked into her eyes for the first time. She had heartbreaks that changed her, disappointments that hardened her, choices she had to make because there was no one else coming to save her. She had to become strong in ways that might have made her brittle. She had to survive. And sometimes survival looks like shutting down, not opening up. It's easy to forget that. Easy to judge her through the eyes of the child who needed more than she gave. But healing begins when we dare to see her, really see her, not just as the woman who raised us, but as the human being she's always been. The woman who may have never been taught how to mother. The woman who was likely mothered by someone carrying even older wounds. The woman who was likely mothered by someone carrying even older wounds. The woman who tried to give love but didn't know how to give what she had never received herself. Think about it for a moment. How many things in your life have you had to figure out without a roadmap? How many times have you repeated behaviors that weren't yours to begin with? Inherited, absorbed, passed down like heirlooms wrapped in silence. Your mother was not immune to that. She may have carried burdens you never saw, fears she never voiced. And it's possible, even likely, that no one ever asked her how she was doing. She just had to keep going, had to be strong, had to hold it all together, even if she was unraveling on the inside. Understanding that doesn't make your pain any less real. It doesn't erase what hurt you, but it does start to open the door to compassion, not just for her, but for yourself. Because if she was never given space to be vulnerable, to be flawed, to be more than the role of mother, how could she possibly give that to you? She didn't fail because she didn't love you. She may have failed because she was never shown how to love in a way that didn't involve sacrifice or suffering. And so maybe, just maybe, part of your healing begins when you allow yourself to stop demanding that she be perfect and start grieving that she never had the chance to be whole. We all want to believe our mothers are supposed to be invincible. But the truth is, she was human. And that truth is not a betrayal. It's the beginning of understanding. And understanding, my friend, is where healing quietly begins. This part is tender, and I want to move through it with care, because for many of us, this is where the ache sits deepest. She loved you, but not always in the way you needed. She may have tried her best, and maybe she didn't. But either way, love doesn't always arrive in the shape we expect. Sometimes it shows up with sharp edges, spoken through sighs instead of soft words, discipline instead of tenderness, worry instead of presence. Maybe she cooked your meals every day but never said, "I'm proud of you." Maybe she worked herself to the bone to give you everything, but couldn't give you affection. Maybe she said, "Be strong," when what you really needed was, "It's okay to cry." And maybe in her mind, all of this was love. Maybe that was the only love she knew. You see, love is shaped by what we've seen. And for many women, especially those who lived in times, cultures, or families that didn't allow softness, love became something practical, not emotional. It became survival. And survival doesn't always leave room for gentleness. That's it. That's it. An emotion doesn't always leave room for gentleness. There is not room for gentleness when bondage, power, love, property, gentleness, survival, and love for people. There is not room for gentleness when bondage, property, gentleness, survival, and love for people. And some man who was meant to be, it just doesn't. So what you needed, emotional safety, freedom to express, warmth, empathy, might have been something she didn't even know existed, let alone knew how to give. Imagine trying to speak a language you were never taught. That's what love felt like for her, maybe. Like trying to write poetry without ever having heard music. And that disconnect between her intention and your experience can leave behind this confusing emotional residue. Because how do you hold the love she gave while still acknowledging the pain it caused? Here's where we often get stuck. We think that if we admit we were hurt, we're being ungrateful. Or if we recognize her effort, we have to pretend we weren't disappointed. But life is never that black and white. You can feel both. You can hold the complexity. You must hold the complexity because that's where real healing begins. You are not selfish for wanting more than what she gave. You are not ungrateful for recognizing that her love had limits. And you are not broken because her love didn't land the way you needed it to. Let me say that again. You are not broken. What she offered may have been wrapped in anxiety, fear, or even control. That doesn't mean she didn't love you. It just means the version of love she offered came from her story, not your needs. Love that is shaped by unhealed trauma often demands more than it gives. It needs you to be small so she can feel safe. It asks you to meet her needs before your own. It confuses obedience with loyalty, and that's not your fault. But now it is your responsibility to give yourself the kind of love you didn't receive, to become fluent in the language of kindness, presence, and trust, to stop shrinking for her comfort and start expanding for your own healing. You didn't choose the love you received, but you can choose the love you give yourself now. And that choice, that's where everything starts to change. There comes a point in your healing where the pain is no longer just about what happened between you and your mother. It becomes about what you've carried since. And here's the hard truth, the one most of us try to avoid. What our mothers didn't heal, they handed to us. Not because they meant to, not because they didn't love us, but because pain that isn't transformed is transmitted. You didn't just inherit her eye color or her laugh, you inherited her coping mechanisms, her fears, her silence, her story, the part she told and the part she never dared to speak. If she was never allowed to cry, you may have learned to numb. If she was told to always be strong, you may have learned to hide your softness like it was shameful. If she was constantly criticized, you may have internalized that voice, and now it lives in you. Think about how often you second-guess yourself, how often you over-apologize, over-second, over-give, how you shrink when you speak truth, how you chase approval like your worth depends on it, how you feel guilty for needing rest or space or to say no. That didn't start with you. It started with generations of women who weren't allowed to feel. Women who We're told to endure, to be nice, to keep the peace. Women who learned that their value was in sacrifice, not in selfhood. And now, here you are, holding it, holding all of it. Not just your pain, but hers. Not just your story, but the chapters she couldn't finish writing. It shows up in your body, the tension in your shoulders, the lump in your throat when you try to speak your truth, the way you can't rest without guilt gnawing at you, the way love feels like performance, not peace. And it's no wonder, because as a child you were absorbing everything, not just her words, but her energy, her worldview, her emotional temperature. You didn't just observe her pain, you adapted to it. You learned how to survive in it. You became the peacemaker, the caretaker, the quiet one, the achiever, the one who didn't cause trouble. And in doing that, you may have lost touch with you. This is not about blaming her. It's about understanding the system. It's about realizing that you are the living intersection of two realities, who she was and who you are becoming. And the moment you become conscious of that, everything shifts. Because once you recognize what's not yours, you can stop carrying it. Once you see that the anxiety, the shame, the guilt, they didn't originate inside of you, you can begin to choose differently. This is what breaking cycles looks like. Not burning everything down, but bravely choosing to see it clearly. Choosing to pause, to question, to soften, to say this ends with me, not out of anger, but out of love. You didn't ask for this inheritance, but you've been entrusted with something powerful. The opportunity to turn pain into wisdom, to turn silence into truth, to turn repetition into healing. And that healing won't always be loud. It might look like crying for the first time in years, or telling yourself you're safe now, or forgiving your younger self for how she tried to survive. That's the sacred work. Not fixing what was broken, but honoring the part of you that refused to stay broken. This next part might be the most delicate of all, the place where your healing meets your grief, because at some point you will have to face a truth that breaks your heart and begins to free it. You may never get the mother you needed. You may never hear the words you longed for. You may never feel the kind of emotional safety you deserved as a child. And yet, you still get to heal. But to do that, you have to give yourself permission to grieve. Grieve the soft hands that didn't hold you when you cried. Grieve the kind words that were never spoken. Grieve the comfort that never came. Grieve the mother you dreamed of, the one who saw you, knew you, adored you without condition. You don't have to pretend it didn't matter. You don't have to justify it by saying, well, she had it worse. Both can be true. She struggled, and you were still hurt. She tried, and it still wasn't enough. Grief is not betrayal. Grief is honesty. And without it, you can't heal. You'll just keep suppressing, denying, minimizing. And that will only keep you locked in a version of yourself that was never allowed to feel. When we refuse to grieve the mother we didn't have, we start trying to earn her love over and over again, in our relationships, in our work, in our reflection. We hustle for worthiness, we overextend ourselves, we people please, we confuse performance with connection. That inner child in you, she still wonders, what if I just tried a little harder? Would she finally love me the way I needed? But here's the thing no one tells you when you start healing. Your mother may not change. She may never become emotionally available. She may never understand the pain her absence caused. She may never be able to love you in the way you need, not because you're unlovable, but because she doesn't have the tools. So what do you do with that? What do you do when the relationship you most wanted to fix isn't yours to fix? You make peace with the reality while honoring the longing. You stop trying to reparent her and start reparenting you. You let yourself cry over what never was. You allow yourself to feel the disappointment, the anger, the sorrow. And then you hold yourself, maybe for the very first time, and whisper, "I'm so sorry you went through that. But I'm here now. I see you. I've got you." This doesn't mean you stop loving her. It means you love her from the truth, not the illusion. It means you stop shrinking yourself to maintain connection. It means you create boundaries not as punishment but as protection for the small, sacred parts of you that were never protected. You can honor the mother she was, the ways she showed up, the sacrifices she made, without silencing the parts of you that still ache. You can thank her for giving you life while also acknowledging that you're now the one responsible for living it. You can hold both realities in your hands, love and loss, gratitude and grief, presence and absence. This is the complicated, courageous, deeply human work of becoming whole. And it starts the moment you stop pretending she had to be perfect and begin accepting that she was never meant to complete you. That was always going to be your sacred task. Somewhere along this journey, this tender, complex, holy journey of healing, you begin to realize something else, something softer, something braver. You realize your story doesn't end with what she couldn't give. It begins with what you choose to give yourself now. Because here's the quiet miracle. Every time you meet your own needs, every time you speak to yourself with gentleness instead of judgment, every time you pause to ask, "What do I need in this moment?" you are breaking a cycle. You are creating the kind of mothering you never received. You are becoming the safe place you always needed. That's what reparenting really is. It's not about blaming your mother forever. It's not about staying stuck in the pain. It's about learning to mother yourself with more kindness, care, and courage than anyone ever taught you. And that's the gift. That's the inheritance you get to rewrite. Because the truth is, you were never too much. You were never too sensitive, too emotional, too needy, too loud, too complicated. You were just a child looking for love in a language your mother didn't know how to speak. But now, you, the adult you get to speak it. You get to learn what it means to sit with your pain instead of running from it. You get to be the one who says, it's okay to feel that. You get to rewrite the story, one honest, messy, beautiful sentence at a time. And maybe one day, when you're holding a child of your own, or even just holding your younger self in a moment of silence, you'll realize you didn't become your mother. You became the person who healed because of her. That doesn't erase what hurt, but it does redeem it. And look, I know it's hard. I know there are days when you're going to want to pick up the phone and just finally hear what you've always longed for. Some days you might still catch yourself hoping she'll change, hoping she'll soften, hoping she'll say, "I see you now, and I'm sorry." And maybe she will, but maybe she won't. Either way, you still get to heal. You still get to choose how you treat yourself. You still get to show up for your inner child like no one ever did. You still get to be the kind of love you were always looking for. Because healing isn't about waiting for her to apologize. It's about no longer needing her permission to love yourself fully. That's what this whole journey has been leading you to. Not a perfect mother, but a whole self. So if you hear nothing else today, hear this. You are not defined by the love you didn't receive. You are defined by the love you're willing to give yourself now. Be patient with the process. Be tender with your heart. Be proud of the healing you've begun. Because it's sacred, and it's real, and it matters. The tenderness we feel for our pain, the sacred, and it's real, and it matters. And as you walk this path, step by step, day by day, breath by breath, know that you are not alone. You are part of a quiet, powerful revolution, a generation of people brave enough to feel, to face what hurt them, to become what they never had. If this spoke to you, sit with it a while. Breathe with it. Be gentle with your heart. Your mother's story may have shaped you, but it does not define you. You are allowed to heal. You are allowed to unlearn. You are allowed to rewrite the story. One courageous, messy, beautiful page at a time. And maybe the most radical thing you'll ever do is to give yourself the love you once begged for. That's not betrayal, that's transformation. So today, start there. With truth, with tenderness, with you.